we've come to the section where I have chosen 7 Andyisms.
That many Andyisms? Oh no.
So I'm just going to sort of rattle through, but just sort of give me, your perspective on these. So obviously this is my perspective as a student of Andy. Everybody else will obviously get different things from different teachers. But these are the kind of gold that I've gotten, and I think can really, across the board, for any type of improv, really, can be little pillars. I like to think of them as pillars. So the first one, I like alliteration, so I've gone with the R's because we've got I think of you as Fred Rogers, Carl Rogers, Bob Ross, so we've got the R's there. So the 2 R's, and I think this is what comes across to me. You're the pillar of be ruthless, then relish. So it's kind of like, like when I would get stuck in this thing where I wasn't ruthless enough with myself to go, right, bang, I'm in, yes, jump and justify, and then relish that moment until you can't relish anymore, and then ruthless, you're in this other place. Does that sort of make sense? Does that resonate? And what are your feelings on that? Why is that important?
I love that sense of ruthlessness in terms of committing.
Yeah.
Like, don't let yourself wiggle out. Like, commit.
Yeah.
Commit to it, and then relish it. I often say, like, build the roller coaster so you can just get a ride on it, but you got to commit to the character first. If you're not ruthless with how you sink into that character and discover them and let that emotion pervade, then you're not going to find the gesture and then the attitude and then the thing that brings them to life for you, and it delights you so that you can relish it, so that the audience can relish in that performance. So I love that. Stealing it, writing it down.
Yeah, steal it. That's fine. This will be recorded, so you can go through and steal it. Because you are also writing a book.
Yes.
So make sure everybody keeps an ear out for that. As I said, I will put like the website stuff and all that at the end, so people can.
Awesome.
Where can they find out sort of when it's coming out and everything? The book.
They can find out on my website, and I'm also going to be doing a pre-sale launch for it.
Awesome.
As well in the next few months.
Fantastic.
So they can pre-buy the pre-book.
Lovely. Well, I would definitely be doing that. I will be jumping and justifying. I'll buy that book first and then justify why afterwards.
Great.
So that was the first one. So be ruthless and relish. The second one, get out of your chair. So on Zoom, you were the guy that got me a stand-up office. You know what I mean? You were the guy that got me out of this sitting and being a sort of passenger with improv online. I'm very passionate about online improv. I think there are a hell of a lot of good things about it. And that was something that I notice is a bit of a weakness, that people do fall into this kind of sitting position. So you really changed everything for me in that one revelation about getting up and about using that physicality to inform character and stuff. So what is your feeling about, and obviously unless you're in an interview, sitting in Zoom? Yeah. Talking to me? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the more of your body that you have to work with, the more you'll find inspiration. And I definitely think that solo improv is it should not be limited by like ability. So if you are in a wheelchair, so that's how you function and move, there's still plenty to work with. Yes. And I think that to the best of our ability, what we have, we can and should at least experiment with as we're discovering what our show is going to be. I think there could be an amazing show that is really located here, that is just a single performer in a chair talking to an audience. So
okay, interesting.
I think that there could be. I think that along the way, in terms of practicing, you should practice the full gamut of tools. It's almost like I'm a really great pointillist painter. You don't just start and learn pointillism and learn nothing else. You learn everything. You learn figurative. You learn all the other skills up to that. You can draw a hand and a ball and all that other stuff. So you should learn all of it. And also, I think sometimes people don't know what they're going to like. they have kind of a bias for what they think they're going to like. So I try to push people through all the different opportunities and options so they can.
Yeah.
And then I try to tell people, like, you have no idea how good you are at X.
Yes.
Because most people don't know.
Yes. And that's kind of going back to sort of the beginning of the interview where we spoke about being a teacher and you just being in that position of objectivity that you can kind of see that maybe other people can't see that, and then you can guide them with that. Thanks for elaborating on that too, about, you know, if you can't actually stand up. I'm so not PC. I'm sorry about that. You do inclusive-ness and diversity as well, so you're very used to being a lot more thinking of other people than me.
It's a learning process. I mean, no one is perfect, even steeped in that work. It's more, the biggest thing to learn is like just learning to recognize, name, and move on from mistakes, because we're all so imperfect. So I think there's much more to learn. Yeah.
Well, as I said, I'm going to justify myself. These are what I've gotten out of
I love it.
out of Andy's thing. So for me, standing up, moving around the room, having more space around me has made a massive difference in doing the improv. So number 3 was pimp your strengths but improve your weaknesses, which you've pretty much just spoken about right now. When you said that people have these strengths and you feel like as a teacher it's your job to kind of point those out and to get them to really push those strengths. But also, like you said, there are other ways of doing things and maybe you're not so good at that, but it's good to explore that and find out what those things are. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that you should build, like, if you use solo improv as a learning process and kind of a laboratory, you should build around what you're really good at, because you'll always be confident. And you should also build on a layer of what is difficult or challenging for you as well. So like when we started working together, we already knew that musical improvisation was a real strength that you had. We could always come back and reincorporate. We haven't spent a lot of time working on that one in particular because that's already a huge skill for you. Although we both knew we wanted to incorporate it. And along the way, we've discovered amazing new skills, like really fun new skills, new strengths rather.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And, you know, I wanted to be challenged in that way. I didn't necessarily want to just go with the music because I knew, like, I've been doing it for 20 years, whatever. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you're really good in that way as well. You are very bespoke. So whatever the student really wants, you've always sort of got that in mind as, like you said, their intention and what's the intention.
I think that most people also know when they're not naturally great at something. I remember I had one student and she took a lot of solo improv with me, and like I kept encouraging her, and then she finally said one day, she's like, I know that I'm not great at this. And that was not entirely true, but there were definitely, performance didn't come naturally to her. Yes. There was always a guardedness.
Yes.
And she made amazing strides in terms of confidence, and she was really funny. She's really, really funny. Her material was really great. And we continued to incorporate that, but she also started to like move over into writing more stuff because that was a real strength for her as well. And she could bring that writing to life. That solo improv became a way for her to discover and then to bring that writing to life. But it was a great lesson for me of this, like the phrase, like, don't blow smokes up someone's ass. Like, it's okay to be honest with people. I would never tell someone like, you're not cut out for this. I've also had students that I'm like, I don't know. And then they go off and they do amazing solo shows.
Yeah.
Or they produce huge things, or they end up having $1 million and being able to produce movies and stuff. And you're like, oh, I'm just impressed by it. I think that the work ethic kind of overcomes all in a lot of situations. And my goal is always to align someone around their real strengths.
Yeah, I mean, I remember saying to you that I'm shit at object work or whatever, and so a lot of the stuff we did, I was challenging myself to do that, and I think it's gotten like at least 50% better just from working with you, and you kind of forcing me to do it in a loving Fred Rogers way. So
one more thing I want to say about that too. I think we also go through like seasons. And I think we sometimes have seasonal strengths. So I've definitely worked with amazing performers, just like with what was going on in life, where it just wasn't coming together or just wasn't working, or like, this is not a time to be doing autobiographical solo improv. Like whatever's going on is too real, too raw. And then maybe 10 years later, it would be the perfect time for them. So I think that, and there's also times when like, I just know I can't do solo improv. It's just like, what will come up is not going to be great. Yeah. What I will source from, this is not the season. Like for me right now, I'm very clear. Like this is the season for me to write this book. It is not a season for me to really drive toward doing online solo improv.
Yeah.
I would be forcing myself to do it only to have like some presence that is not really important to me right now. And like just with what everyone's going through behind the scenes, me included, I don't necessarily want to explore that in that idiom. What I'd rather do is like pour it all into the book. And but I think that we have seasonal strengths as a performer and in solo too.
Interesting. I really love that. Again, a very kind of mindful way of looking at things. So beautiful. A mindful, spiritual way. Number 4, endow objects with power. Okay, so what I mean by that is something that struck me about your Sybil performance, the one you can see on YouTube, the Twinkie one, was the amount of power that the Twinkie actually had. And then when we were doing coaching, we spoke about sort of being in a room and talking about the different objects in a room, and that one of those objects will be metaphorical for the character or something the character's going through. I hope that makes sense. Can you speak to that, the power of objects and the metaphors sort of behind the objects that you may bring into a scene?
I think it's an area that's not necessarily explored because so much of improvisation is like you're imagining the objects that are around. So we don't necessarily, it's not like you're seeing the stairway down into a basement like you might in an Arthur Miller play, and you know that it like starts to have this sort of metaphorical resonance. In improv, we kind of create the objects just to get the job done. And sometimes I think we flirt with this object means something, but for the most part, we don't exploit it as much as we could. Years ago now, I did a version of my show where it was like a play, a one act play, but it might have multiple scenes, and the objects became much more important there. Just by the way that it was constructed. And I think that really built that in, that those objects can become reflections or mirrors for the characters, inspiration for the characters. Like the floor is very, very squeaky. Oh, this is my character. Like there's just different ways that you could do it. Or the floor, the floor near the door is squeaky, and you play a character that's kind of a shut-in. And then whenever they go to leave, you get to do the sound effect that. So that's like an environmental one. But I remember discovering a fishbowl for a character, and then that character was in kind of a glass enclosed office, and that became a real tight connection of a person almost in a fishbowl.
Wow.
Those discoveries don't happen all the time, but now I kind of play with linking those things. If I'm a character hanging up a dirty old t-shirt, how am I like a dirty old t-shirt? How is my life like a dirty old t-shirt? And it may or may not come out in the wash, as they say. Like the audience may never hear it, I may never say it, or I might. But that kind of stuff for me is really inspiring. And it's one of those things like you're constantly trying to like suck in any information and utilize it. So why not use those as well?
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot in that. I'd like to explore that a bit more actually at some point in my improv career. So number 5 now, I want to be really clear about this one. You need to be clear to me what you meant by it. I'm still master. I'm still getting it. So this was number 5. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Number 5. Be conceited in your character. Trust yourself. Know that the character knows. Be conceited about it. Speak to that.
That for me is something that I think that I'm not as strong at in group improv as I am in solo. But when I do a lot of solo, then I try to go into a group, then I'm actually better at it. But it's this sense of playing, and not even high status characters, but characters who 100% believe they know what's going on. This for me comes primarily from the one format of a character that like talks to the audience as though they're a character.
Right.
Like the drill sergeant, the boss addressing the room. It is, I would have to say for me, it's like the one area where I just would never naturally play. I always wanted to play more meek characters or silly characters. But to take on that jackass boss or the cooking show host who just is like, I've got it so handled and is relating to the audience in that way, there's a different dynamic. And for many people, I think as you move into solo improv, it's an area that we don't push ourselves to play in. What we're doing is we're expressing our own nervousness. Like once you get attuned to like, what am I feeling? What am I doing? What is my body doing? My body is feeling nervous. Then you just like create characters from there. What we're not necessarily doing is we're not necessarily creating characters from like this guy, this thing. And just in the same way that they have those power poses where you take on a pose and you suddenly feel so much more confident. That is like magic dust. It's great for your improv because suddenly you act super hyper confident. You totally have it going together. And then now you feel that way as well. That internal emotional follows the physical.
Yeah, so it's almost like a fake it till you make it type.
Yeah, a little bit of fake it till you make it. And it's just fun to watch those characters because those characters, if you set them up as like knowing it all, having it all, believing in themselves, those fall from graces are going to be delightful. That's like easy breezy. The character who's like doesn't know it, doesn't have the thing that they want, they're going to gain it probably over time. Yeah. The character that has it all, thinks they got it, is probably going to get pushed off their pedestal.
Yeah. And we love that. We want to see that.
Yeah, easy breezy scripting. You don't have to work hard.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Okay, so number 6, so we're almost to 7. Number 6, so use the space to define character and relationship. So what I mean by this, and obviously this would be different in real life as to Zoom, but I still feel like you can incorporate this in a Zoom sense. So we did a practice, one of the many I was out of breath physical initiation type practices where I was 2 characters and I was utilizing sort of that side of the screen and that side of the screen, and I was doing some kind of activity, which I've told you I'm not good at object work. I was doing this thing and we're in a mail room or something and I was like, they reckon it's coming in soon. And then the other one was like, yeah. Anyway, these 2 characters obviously had an affection for each other, but for some reason I really kept to my space. And then when you reenacted the scene for me, you did things like, reached over and got something from this other character's space to give a subtext to this kind of floating away of boundaries that was happening as these characters were sort of becoming attracted to each other, which is kind of like a masterful physical symbology of what's going on in the scene. So you just have this real talent for that, for invading space of another character. And I suppose if this was improv and there really were 2 people here, that could also be a kind of a technique where you're kind of doing a subtext, but it's a sort of a physical kind of a subtext. Just talk to me about that. So we've sort of spoken about the physicality and how that can create a character, but also the relation to space. And in Zoom, you might be talking about this space, you know, and then how that also informs character or the space between characters when you're playing 2 in solo prov.
Now you have me also wondering, it's like, did I rewrite your scene? Was he being a bad
No, not at all. No, because I said to you, I don't know what it is, because I was asking a question about this, and then you did it, and naturally, you did this. And I had this epiphany, and I was like, he just invaded that other person's space. Oh my God, I can do that. I can invade my own space as the other person. What? Yeah. So, well,
you don't have the benefit of being in a class watching a bunch of other people also perform on their own. So, but I think I probably discovered that probably early on it was probably something, you know, as poignant as 2 humping teenagers. Like it was probably just like realizing, oh, these 2 people can suddenly like be on top of each other awkwardly, like how wonderful it is to like work with them in different weird ways.
Yeah. And that reminds me too, another scene that I did where that was, it might have been the same scene, and they end up sort of getting together. And then so I've gone, okay, but I haven't been ruthless about it. And you're like, be ruthless about get in, whatever. And then I've gone, okay, that's a bit embarrassing, you know. And then you're like, no, relish it. You know, like, so you've done it. Get really into the whole, and the, so that relishing side, like being that, coming back to that ruthless relish thing, I think it's improved me as an improviser across the board. But yeah, I just, where did this come from for you? Like, how did you know if you're gonna do it big, and then really like sort of relish what that is you've created for yourself?
I think that was, I think for me comes from film. I went to film school a million years ago. So it's that slow motion moment where we see the slap hitting and making a connection, where the violins swell on the kiss. Well, I don't have violins to swell. The kiss needs to be important. I want to expand this moment as if it's everything. How can I explore this moment? How can I slow down time so that we know that this moment is rich and real? And then I think if you have that choice all the time, every single moment in life and in improv. But just the sense that there could be something could happen there, and it could be a perfectly flat scene, but then something like that, like even if it's the two characters just simply working around each other, and then the arm sort of like grazes the back, and you start making the sound effect of like the fabric on fabric, like, and then the micro moment is almost like the close-ups.
Yeah, it's so
that
nice.
Mindset, I think, really informs the opportunity in the moment of what could be going on.
Yeah,
like it's also once you get past the almost kitchen sink drama-ness of sort of some of the stoic improv that many of us kind of like learned a lot. Like you want to make really good relationships, grounded characters, still find the funny, heighten good, like for all good reasons. But once you release yourself from those rules, don't always need to apply. They can apply if that's what I want to do with my solo improv. But if I also know I can be someone discovering a character that's seeing the person they're going to fall in love with, I can suddenly become their heart beating. I can go back to that person. I can be someone witnessing that, like, oh God, I can like bounce, like anything is possible in those moments.
Yeah, there's that innocent adventurer again.
I can change the rules.
Yeah, change the rules, break the rules, freedom, total freedom. I mean, that's really why I love improv. It's freedom. It's the most free you'll ever be in your life, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so we are at the last one. We're at number 7.
Oh no.
And it really goes off the back of what you just said. Actually, you said something here naturally and segued in. Of course you did. So raise the stakes, zoom into the moment, heighten reactions, and this is a direct quote. Make this the most important moment / choice / thing in the world for the characters. So really, again, I guess we're talking about that relishing again, that moment, and really making it count. I think Rosowski says something like, why is this day any different from any other day? What is it about this moment? Committing 100% to this moment, I suppose. But I want to get your take on that. So I've got this from some notes that you sent me. Make this the most important moment, choice thing in the world for the characters. So what's your feeling around that?
For me, this is one of the other opportunities in a scene. So I know I'm a character that's like, I make a ring sound on a phone and I go to answer that phone, and it could just be like, how? That's a perfectly valid choice. It could also become, answering this phone is life or death. I don't even know what it is yet. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to suddenly that is a huge thing. And then I can have an entire scene about the phone ringing. I could be making the sound effect the whole time.
Wow.
and then just like terrified to pick up the phone. And then you get the joy of being like, hello? No, this isn't her.
Yeah.
Like, it's just that it's almost telescoping the moment. But you can choose to do it at any point. It's like you just lock into it. Like, this is the most important thing. This is the most substantial thing for this character. And you may not even know what it is, but it's a matter of like someone hands a character a piece of paper, and then that piece of paper becomes so important or so amazing.
Yeah.
That's always going to be an interesting story for us rather than it just be neutral.
Yeah. I remember it just came to my mind now. I remember you saying also in the Monica interview, Monica has a podcast called Art of Yes, so go check Andy out on there. He talks a lot more about his origin story and stuff. So on there, you spoke about one solo improv you did, and I've seen this online, it's gold. This person's just getting ready for a date or something, and they're just like putting on all these different things, and then it gets to the point they're waiting for this person to turn up, and then they end up taking everything off, and then the door rings kind of thing. So is that kind of an example of sort of heightening the stakes or raising the stakes and then becoming very involved in that? I mean, I just love the cyclical nature of that particular scene, that all of that went on, all of that came off, and then bang, the resolution. Just talk to me about sort of what was going on in your mind. Do you remember at all, like, what was that choice about? Like, was there a choice? Did it start with an object? What was going on there?
I think that the kind of the internal mantra that I kept telling myself was just like, stick with it. You'll discover something. And I didn't know where that scene was going until it got there, really. I was just setting up for a dinner party. It was very elaborate. It started with a person getting ready and doing a few silly things, like putting in some contact lenses or something. And then I tried to like just make everything feel very significant and beautiful. As a focus. And then I was on that particular one, I was really improvising with the tech crew. So they had full ability to like give me sound effects and stuff. And so I thought for sure they'd give me a doorbell, and they didn't give me a doorbell. And it was one of the best gifts, because then I'm like, well, I spent like 5 minutes setting up this beautiful elaborate party or dinner date. And then so I started like snuffing the candles out, putting the plates away, and just reversed. And it was like, because of that gift of a non-response, and I know that it was on purpose, got all the way back to where I started, and the lights didn't go out. And I'm like, I got to keep on going. So then I pulled my teeth out, pulled my eye out, unscrewed my leg, like went beyond where I had started as the character.
Yeah.
And then they hit the doorbell, and it was like one of those, I mean, you improvise 100 scenes that don't work out that well, but in that sense, everything was going really well. The gift of non-response in that case forced me to find something different. And it's like one of those things you learn from. You're like, if I stick with a scene that I think is a 60-second scene and I go like much longer, there could be something there. There might not be. I just happened to get lucky in that case that everything came together. And like what a perfect comedic setup. And it's like, that's when the years of experience just sort of lock in. Like, as soon as the doorbell goes on, you have to go through everything that you just did to get ready for that. But you have to do it at like quadruple time.
Yeah. Oh, it's gold. It's textbook gold. Comedy gold, yeah. So again, there is that ruthlessness though. So you're kind of like, I've committed to this, and I'm gonna see it right to the end of where it can go. And I think maybe a lot of people might be a bit fearful of that, because it feels like you've done all that, you've completed it, you've got the goal. Now what? So it was pretty amazing that you could just go, I'm just gonna go back. I'm just gonna go backwards. That's a pretty cool thing.
I think that if I try to think about it, I think that its short form improv experience helps. Once you've played some freeze tag, you learn how to justify things. So if I end up in a taking on a physical initiation, and I'm kind of like physically inchworming across the stage, and it's a really big stage, I could do that for 5 minutes and it would be really weird for the audience and I could heighten that physicality. But the short form training in me wants to justify at some point. Like I've got to say, like, what is this? Do I turn to the audience and I'm a lice moving through someone's hair?
Yeah.
But I really would love to be upgraded to a mosquito. Like they have it. They're so glamorous, those mosquitoes. They all talk with French accents. Like for me, it kind of, if I watch too much, just like not, if I watch something go on physically for too long without it being described or heightened or something has to transform and happen, it sort of works against that short form training. So I think that's a place where that short form training comes in handy. I just have to justify it.
Yeah, and I've got written here, you are the king of jump and justify, definitely. Whether it be a notion, a physicality, a relationship, a premise, whatever. I mean, that's something that you really go for it. You know what I mean? Like that. That's awesome. Awesome. I mean, and the little specificities as well. So even like you said, the mosquito's French.
That's it's the extra, it's the added bonus.
Yeah.
Isn't there like a business book called Give 'em the Pickle where it's just like, give them that little extra something?
Yeah.
Because I know that if I say a mosquito with a French accent, I'm going to play that mosquito with a terrible French accent. Like, so if you it's like and this, and this, and this. Yeah,
and it's making it more real as well in a sense, and the more real it becomes, the easier it is to play. Well, that's how I feel anyway. The more that you sort of set that up. So I think we're sort of coming to the end. Is there anything you want to say or any thoughts you have for anybody? Maybe do you have any advice for people who are just starting out in their solo improv? Just generalized kind of advice about anything. And do you have any advice that would alter for somebody who's been improvising for, say, 2 years or more? A lot of people say there's a sort of a plateau that happens at that point. So I guess it's 2 questions. One is for newbies, what's the biggest sort of bit of advice? And then for people who may be going through that sort of plateau in improv.
Yeah. For newbies, I would say stick in it and get the basics. Continue to like drive toward those ensemble basics and that sense of being able to ground yourself in character and object work. Like that's where you learn your object work to start off, emotional reality. And I think that you needn't wait until you're a master of improv, long form ensemble improv, or even short form ensemble improv before you try solo. I think you can try it fairly early on. There's things to learn from it.
Yeah.
And I've had people who are non-improviser performers who haven't had a ton of improv, but they perform, who have done it with great success. So I don't think that you have to have 5 years or more. At the 2-year mark, if you're really dedicated to your ensemble improvisational training, I think that's a great time to try it, to take it on. One of the things that's so amazing is that you get to discover your voice. And I think that it's a huge theme for me now in like my implied improvisational work, the sense of uniqueness and collaboration. Like, what is that balancing act so I can have both? And it's not like I'm just unique or I'm just an ensemble. And it's an opportunity to discover what is my voice when I don't have, when I'm not required to kind of support other people. Not that there's anything terrible about that, but when I get to simply support my own ideas, and I have to support my own ideas, what comes out then? And I also think that ensemble improv has a kind of a long history of requiring people who might be unique or different or the onlys, people also from marginalized identities, to kind of like fit in, to assimilate, and to play stereotypes or to play along with other people. And I know that for me, there was always a little bit of a misfit with the rest of some of my ensembles. So being able to be like, what is my thing? Then I went back to my ensemble work after doing solo, and I just felt a lot more confident. Yeah. More, I could kind of tell what I liked to do or what I didn't like to do. And some of it was like, I don't want to play with this ensemble anymore. Like it just isn't it doesn't work for me. I don't feel like I get to do my best work. And that's a good insight too.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really, really great point. You can, learn your voice and where that sits, and then sort of have that more empowerment there to know, yep, this is right for me, or that's not right for me, or really, really honoring your own talents, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to ask you, like, what have you learned about your own talents in doing the solo improv work at your juncture in your improv growth?
I've learned that I'm not scared of challenge, which is good.
Yeah.
It certainly was challenging. I've learned that I always feel like improv, it reflects life. So when things happen in improv, it's always sort of reflective of psychology that's going on anyway. But solo improv really, really kind of went there. I know I had a meltdown moment with you in one of them, and you, of course, held the space so beautifully, where I was just crying, and I was like, I don't know why I can't do this. I'm just waiting for something to happen. And then bang, that was like a psychological truth that had sort of gone on in my career, in my life. So I think just sort of that being on your own as well, and having to be brutally honest with yourself, I guess, and have that self-reflection has probably been the most powerful thing about solo prov. But in saying that, it's also improved me in duos and trios and ensemble, because I am taking more responsibility for myself in a scene, and I am more aware of the energy that I'm bringing, as opposed to waiting for something.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sense anyway, because I've always been a sort of a partnership type person, so I would be sort of waiting, and I don't want to encroach on your space, so that makes sense. But I guess doing it with you, you were able to support me enough to be able to go, actually, I do have something to say. I can be more of the catalyst, rather than just sort of, I'll be your partner and I'll be nice and, yay, yes, and come on. So yeah, that, and as I said, the physicality for me was a huge thing for me.
It's become a real strength for you too.
Well, thanks. Appreciate it. So I did want to thank you too, for your beautiful holding of that space when I just had that fucking meltdown, because there could be a lot of teachers out there who are good teachers, but they don't necessarily know what to do in that situation, and you were fairly silent, but just holding that and allowing me to go through what I had to go through. And I think it makes sense, because you speak about the seasons of, going through seasons of improv, and sometimes things will be coming up for you, bubbling up for you, and improv might not be as easy, or you might not be in the zone as much, just because there's so much going on. So just having someone that had an innate understanding of that, I think, really helped me to embrace the solo prov. And I've never worked hard in my life, people. This man. Yeah.
Lots of sweat.
Yeah. Big drills. But totally, I feel I've definitely improved in my improv across the board. Yeah.
Well, I've definitely seen it. You came in strong and brave, and I love that you take on that sense of bravery. One of the best things that anyone can do that for themselves is just be brave and take on the next terrifying thing. Wow, that should probably be the little quote. There's going to be a few of them in this one, I can tell. So I guess it just remains to say thank you so much for coming on, and really looking forward to your book. I will be pre-ordering that, and I really hope everybody else does as well. I'll be putting the website stuff and all that at the end of this, so make sure you check out Andy, because he's amazing, and that Sybil, that Twinkie thing, man, it kills me. Thank you so much. I'm just really bad at goodbyes. I'm great at starting things. We'll just hang up. We'll just click, just out. We go out.
Yeah. Okay, I can press stop on the record. So maybe can you just count me out? Just count me out, and then I'm going to press stop. No, I'm going to take control. I'm going to take control, and I am going to press stop on this. Thank you so much, Andy, for being a part of this podcast.
I am so honored to be a part of this podcast, to do work with you and to have this conversation today. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thank you.